extremely fascinating island in the middle of the western Pacific Ocean called Yap, which used massive 12 feet stones as its first form of money. Yap Island is a part of Micronesia, one of the most inaccessible islands on planet Earth, 1,700 kilometers east of the Philippines, which is a scientist's or economist's dream case study of an untouched, isolated, ancient society. In 1900, their entire market was three things: fish, coconuts, and sea cucumber. The island had a few thousand people living there, and you could walk the entire island in one day. This would seem to be the perfect place for barter to thrive, but that turned out to be wrong. Instead, they had these huge ray stones or face stones, massive donut stones, which could weigh 3,500 kilograms, equivalent to two rhinoceroses, and they could measure up to 12 feet tall. They would use these giant bamboo sticks to carry on the shoulders of 4 or 8 men, or if possible, to roll the stones from place to place or owner to owner. Surprisingly, these massive stones were not from the island of Yap itself, but rather were made from limestone quarried from Palau, an island 450 kilometers away. This meant a treacherous and life threatening canoe, which could take 30 days to canoe each way, assuming you had strong rowers for 10 hours a day. According to historian William Henry Furness, who visited the island in 1903, the size of these massive stones was actually an advantage rather than a disadvantage. His quote, "When it takes 4 strong men to steal the price of a pig, burglary cannot but prove a somewhat disheartening occurrence. As may be supposed, thefts of face stones are almost unknown. But it gets even more astonishing. The stones were partially valued on size, the fineness of the grain, and the whiteness of the limestone, but turns out the main value driver of the stones was how risky and dangerous the venture to obtain the stones were. If lives were lost in the journey to haul the stones in a canoe, the stones were worth more. If a stone was brought by a larger ship instead of a canoe, the resulting stones would carry less value simply because they were easier to obtain. A lot like gold, the rarer and more difficult to obtain, the more valuable the raised stones were. But even more remarkable, they discovered that it was rare for the people of Yap to feel the need to actually transport the raised stones from one house to another. They would simply offset debts against debts, while any outstanding debts would be carried into the future for later deals. As Furness put it, quote, "The noteworthy feature of this stone currency is that it is not necessary for its owner to reduce it to possession. After concluding a bargain which involves the price of a face stone too large to be conveniently moved, its new owner is quite content to accept the bare acknowledgement of ownership, and without so much as a mark to indicate the exchange, the coin remains undisturbed on the former owner's premises." And that's not even the most shocking idea. What shocked me more than everything was that the face stones didn't even have to be visible. To quote the historian, "There was in the village nearby a family whose wealth was unquestioned, acknowledged by everyone, and yet no one, not even the family itself, had ever laid eye or hand on this wealth. It consisted of an enormous face stone, whereof the size is known only by tradition. For the past 2 or 3 generations it had been, and was at that time lying at the bottom of the sea. It was universally conceded that the mere accident of its loss overboard was too trifling to mention, and that a few hundred feet of water offshore ought not to affect its marketable value. The purchasing power of that stone remains, therefore, as valid as if it were leaning visibly against the side of the owner's house, and represents wealth as potentially as the hoarded inactive gold of a miser in the Middle Ages, or as our silver dollars stacked in the treasury of Washington, which we never see or touch, but trade with on the strength of a printed certificate that they are there." John Maynard Keynes, the economist who revolutionized finance, later said that this historian, quote, "has brought us into contact with a people whose ideas on currency are probably more truly philosophical than those of any other country. Modern practice in regard to gold reserves has a good
The
deal to learn from the more logical practices of the island of Yap," end quote.
destination.
Like both gold and silver, the
According
islands of Yap valued face stones because of their rarity and difficulty to obtain. Also, like gold and silver, the face stones were easily recognizable. Instead of being 12 feet massive circle stones, gold and silver both have their famous, unmistakable color and shine. Unlike gold and silver, the face stones were not easily transportable, they were not divisible, whereas gold and silver can be melted and are therefore effectively infinitely divisible. Gold and silver are also different in that they are completely indestructible. They do not rot or evaporate or decay, and unlike silver, gold doesn't even tarnish. So while the people of Yap did find their own unique version of the gold or silver standard against which to measure wealth, they also proved that gold and silver have critical advantages which make gold and silver the ultimate version of wealth and money across the globe over thousands of years.